Hello, Saints fans. Welcome to the Thursday afternoon live stream. Um, Today, obviously, thumbnail said it all. Going to talk about the going to talk about the upcoming game against Commanders and kind of the situation where we're sitting in. It's not really a good one, but I mean, catchphrase. It is what it is. So going into this game and just I kind of knew beforehand before I even started looking anything up what the Commanders. Um, what they are. They're a pretty good offensive team, especially rushing and scoring. They're in top five in the NFL in both those categories. Um, Rookie quarterback Jane Daniels has, for the most part, most of the year played really well, but he can do so much. He is the typical wave of the future when it comes to young quarterbacks. That the guys that can throw it and run it, and they're going to force you to constantly defend 11, no matter what the play call is. You can't do somewhat like we did last week, would say a Drew Lock, where we just kind of, we're not really going to spy him or go in some situations, just hope we rally somebody to the tackle if he comes out of there and runs. And it almost cost you at the end of the game. But this is Daniels is bringing a different dynamic. And I don't know if we've seen this year a quarterback with this combination of being able to move on the ground, running it, and throw a pretty decent deep ball to a pretty good receiver in Terry McLaurin. So I'm keeping looking at this game as a situation where we've got to run the ball, and I've got Kendre Miller on the thumbnail for a reason. I think he's going to have to be a huge part of this. You know, he kind of disappeared a little bit in that Giants game for some reason, where really wasn't on the field. And we definitely weren't giving the ball. I think that's got to change. He and Alvin are going to have to get a lot of snaps and a lot of carries. Quit fooling around with Jamal Williams. In fact, at this point, I'm wondering why he's not a game day inactive. Um, and pound it out on the run, because Washington likes to run the ball too. And Brian Robinson looks like for the first time in quite a few weeks is healthy. They don't have Austin Eckler. McNichols is the guy that's been kind of filling in. Plus, they got the Chris Rodriguez. I believe he's in his second year. He's touched the ball some. Receiver wise, it's McLaurin. Their number two guy, Noah Brown, apparently has something going on. They said eternally. I think they kidney maybe or something, but he's going to be out for a while. The rest of their receiving core is Zach Ertz is really kind of their number two guy, their tight end. And you're going to get some help from guys like Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, Zacchaeus, who was with Atlanta for a little bit and was a thorn in our side once or twice when we played the Dirty Birds. So they're going to put points up if you let them. And I think one of the things is why this running game is so important. It's a little bit like the game plan we had against the Rams. I think is kind of where we're going to have to go with this, because you have to dirty the game up a little bit. If you win this one, you're going to win it ugly. You're going to have to keep it low scoring. You get in a shootout, you're in deep, deep trouble. And you need a time of possession. You need to hold the ball. You need to stay in front of the chains. And whichever quarterback, and we're going to hold that off till later, but whatever quarterback is going to play or start the game, you got to help them out the best you can. And running the ball is the best way that you're going to be able to do it. I mean, there's no doubt. So, and that's me checking Twitter to see. I'll keep updating it to see if they see anything about the starting quarterback situation. But you're going to have to keep running the ball, stay in front of the chains. Do not get caught up in long down and distance problems, because it's going to be a huge problem. And you kind of look at the Commanders' defense. They give up less than 200 yards passing, fifth overall in the league. But for the most part, total defense is kind of in the middle, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that range. Individually, they give up a lot in rushing. They're 27th, give up 136. So again, Kendre Alvin's going to have to carry a hard load in this game. Scoring about 22.8 a game. Yeah, so it's about what we score is 22.3. So you're going to have to hit a lot of your averages. You're going to have to play a really good game on offense. You can't turn the ball over. You can't take negative plays. You're going to have to find a way to get some explosive plays. You're going to have to find a way. We're so limited at receiver, and Marshawn's playing, it looks like. So there's a good chance you can assume, sort of like some of the other teams have done with MVS, who's our most dangerous weapon through the air, can figure out a way where they can just take him away from large portions of the game, and you're going to have a hard time getting him the ball. The other guys are going to have to step up. I mean, that's just hopefully Bub Means can get out there and do some of the good stuff that he was flashing a little bit. We saw him in the middle of the season before his injury, but he's going to have to take that to the next level. You know, Kevin Austin Jr. is going to have to show up and have a big game. So it's going to be a tough sled. It's going to be a difficult game, and we knew that all along. But I'm caveating to this and talk about the offensive line cannot play especially in the interior and especially in the running game, cannot play as terrible as they played last Sunday. Because that's going to be the difference in giving yourself a chance to pull an upset. Like the Rams game, you gave yourself a chance. You had one to eke out a win and get out the dome with a victory. Or if you can't run it and you have those struggles on the offensive line, especially in that interior, game could very well resemble more of what the Denver game at home looked like. I don't know if you're going to really have an in between. I think you either got to fight and play this thing out and play it dirty, like I said, dirty brand of football, and I don't mean illegal. I mean like it doesn't look pretty brand of football, but it's effective. And keep that game slow. Let both sides trade punches with the running game. Hope you can pull it out. Here lies in the problem with that philosophy. We were better last week against the Giants, but for the most part, we've struggled horribly against the running game. If they want to pump the ball right up the middle with Brian Robinson most of the game, and then have Daniels do his thing occasionally, and use that to set up deep shots down the field again, probably looking at a pretty long day because they will be able to control the ball and they'll be able to take. They'll be able to look for McLaurin whenever they feel like they want to do it. They'll more than likely, if Robinson's able to pace a running game for him, they'll have Ertz open all over the middle of the field. And again, it's going to be a long day, and shades of the Denver game would pop up at that point. So you got to run it. I mean, you shorten the game. Best case scenario, you've got a game so shortened because of the running game and controlling the clock that by 2:45 we're out the dome with the upset win. I just don't see any other way this game can go. Mostly because, and I've drug it out as long as I could, but 10 after 2 still haven't seen anything about it. And I don't think you're going to see a whole lot on which one of the young guys is starting. Yeah, supposedly they're holding out for Carr. I think that's a pipe dream, but you never know. And I don't really mind so much that this is getting played so close to the vest in the sense of if there's just a teeny tiny bit of gamesmanship going on here where you can buy, even if it's just the opening series of scripted plays, whether it's Hayner or Rattler, some small advantage because Washington doesn't know which one's gonna be in the huddle until you huddle that in that first drive. I'm all for it. We In both cases, they're going to need all the help they can get because defensively, Washington kind of shakes out this way. They've only forced 12 turnovers on the year. There's only 3 of them are interceptions. And Chin, Sanders and Fowler, Fowler's defensive edge player, each have 1. So you have you control that part of your game and don't put the ball at risk against these guys. They don't necessarily take it away, not at an extremely high level. They've got Bobby Wagner patrolling the middle, who's as timeless and ancient as Demario Davis is, and he's having another pretty good year. He's already 100 total tackles, 7 of them for loss. He's involved combined in 3 either forced or recovered fumbles. I think it's 2 forced, 1 recovered, 2 sacks. He's going to get his plays, and he's going to patrol that middle and pretty much lock it down. In the secondary, Chin, one of their safeties, when they can get into a situation where they can play him in the box, he's really, really good. You know, he's kind of that hybrid guy up there. If you remember him a couple of years ago in Carolina, had a couple pretty good games against us, kind of doing that thing. They will use him back as a too high safety, like all NFL teams do. If you manage to keep him back there, you're probably a little better off. Their corners, one of the reasons why they traded for Marshawn, I think their corners are kind of solid, not necessarily spectacular, not necessarily thinking they're going to make big plays, but I think they do a solid enough job. And one of the reasons why they're fifth in the league in passing defense is the fact that up front, we mentioned Dante Fowler, 8.5 sacks. Frankie Louvu's got 8, 16.5 sacks between just those two guys in 13 games. That's basically one of them's going to get you a sack every game type statistic. And you got 14.5 combined from the rest of that team. You mess around, and again, this goes back to the running game, and I think where Washington can really be dangerous on you is you mess around and you get caught behind the chains, you commit stupid penalties, some of that stuff that's bit us in the behind in the past. Fowler and Louvu can make your day just absolutely miserable if you're a quarterback. So I think the name of the game, and I know Northern's put some stuff up there, and I saw somewhere where he had posted a "We win 2017." That may be a bit high scoring game for us to be able to win, but I think it's in that ballpark. I think you have to control a game. You're gonna have to keep it close and tight, and they're 2 better defenders, or 3 of their better defenders, but they're all kind of up front for the most part, and if you can run through that and then start stretching that field, and like we're saying, maybe get Chin out of the box if they're going to try to put him up there, you know, negate Wagner as much as possible from running around and doing his thing, but more importantly, keeping those 2 edge guys from being in your backfield and terrorizing your quarterback all day. I think that's really and truly the only path to win this. And if you're starting 2 young quarterbacks and those 2 pass rushers, I mean, Louvu used to play for Carolina. We remember him too, getting us several times in the last couple of years. It's just something you can't expose them to, and that's kind of my big fear about which one they decide to go with. And that's probably the next conversation everybody's going to want to have before I get to y'all questions. Who do I think is going to start? I don't have the foggiest clue what they're going to do. I'm almost feeling like after the couple of times Darren Rizzi's talked to the media the last 2 days, it's almost kind of like they're not sure what they're going to do, but hopefully that's, like I said, just gamemanship and not just, like they got caught unaware without a plan, which I'm like, pretty much you should always have a plan that your start quarterback may go down. Again, you've already lost him for 3 games already this year. So, so I don't really know what they're going to do. I guess the next question would be, what do you think I would do? And I am completely torn on this because I can see two things that the Saints need to find out during this stretch when it comes to those backups. If Carr is going to realistically be out for a while, he probably should be, but again, we'll see how that goes. One thing is Rattler got his 3-game start under very dire circumstances, but it won't be that dissimilar set of circumstances. Not quite the same, but it's still not a great ideal situation. The way the team's currently playing and who you've got left on the roster to put out there with a starting quarterback. So part of me wouldn't mind seeing if Rattler after the layoff can come back in and respond, and those little and it was mostly in the Tampa Bay game for a couple of quarters, really. And then after that, it was less and less, but you'd see those little, oh man, yeah, I get it. I get why, you know, I get why a lot of people thought, yeah, one day he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. That being said, Haina deserves his shot. I mean, he really does. If Rattler would have, I guess that, you know, you got to kind of say it. And I hate saying it this way because I don't necessarily think it was circumstance driven with a lot going on and a lot going wrong on many levels of the organization, whether you were talking about on the field or the coaching staff at the point when he got his shot. So, I mean, I want to caveat that, but even with all that being said, it was kind of a regression, and I don't want to put him out there if he's not kind of got his head back in the game and can be able to turn around, and maybe we can start seeing the glimpses more and more for a whole game would be lovely of what he was showing the flashes in that first 3-game stint. But however, Haener deserves his chance. So I'm a little I'm okay, really, actually, whatever which one they decide to go with, as long as they go with them. You know, unless it's whoever gets to start, unless it becomes so debacle early, you're worried about him, yeah, basically scoring him for life as a starting quarterback if you don't get him out the game. But as long as it doesn't get that bad, I think you've got to see what they have for full 4 quarters. In the case of Haener, you need to see it because you haven't seen it yet. In the case of Rattler, you need to see, is it still what we were seeing towards the end? Because he's been interviewed a couple times and he said he learned a lot from those 3 starts and learned even more, you know, basically going back to being the third emergency quarterback. So part of me wants to test that theory, but part of me wants to really give Haener his shot to go, what can you do? Because either way, in the next 4 games, perfect world, we find out we can answer this question on both of them. Is Spencer Rattler, is Jake Haener ready to be an NFL quarterback? Are they showing enough going, yeah, if we have to, we can give them the keys to the car or not? You got kind of 4 games figured out before you going to roll into 2025 and start figuring out the long-term future of this team. And if either one of those 2 guys is a part of it, you really have a chance 4 games to find out. So that's the breakdown as I see it of us against the Commanders. Sum up, we better be able to run the ball. If we don't, we're in deep, 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 deep trouble. If we do run it, we're gonna have to play it ugly, gonna have to win it ugly, gonna have to keep the thing close and keep it low scoring. We don't want to shoot out, and we want to find out something, some really, whether it's a good bit of information or a horrible piece of information, but one way or the other, we need to get information on those 2 young guys over these last 4 games. I'll end it with this. I probably should have let off with this. I kind of buried the lead here. As of NFL.com, our chances of making the playoffs right now are less than 1%. And with a win against Washington, it jumps all the way up to 2%. So I think it's nice that the team doesn't want to tank, is still trying to get that fight and win games and do all that they can. At the same time, as fans, I guess we probably need to be a little realistic about it, and I'm sure deep down they are too. That this is would be a true miracle 4-game stretch if you went all 4 and then find yourself in the wild card round. So keeping that in mind, top of my list is finding out what exactly do you have with those 2 young quarterbacks. The most information you can glean from what they can do in these next 4 games. Never, ever, ever, never. Because actually, I think that's look. I like both of them, and I'll watch them when they do it. But yeah, I'm not judging. I'm just saying driving around and talking on a podcast is not something I would sign off on. Yeah. Look, the and I don't know who you're I'm assuming you're talking about Nick Underhill, but look, believe me, it's a struggle to get up here and talk about this team sometime and not drop multiple F bombs over a very short span of time on an absolutely regular basis. Yeah, there it is. I knew I'd seen you somewhere on that. Look, I get this, you know, I think I've seen in some way, shape, or form the words trap game um, prior to us beating Atlanta and prior to us, um, I don't want to say almost beating the Rams, but giving them a game in a game that in a style of game they didn't want to play. That they don't want to play like that. They want to play like you saw them the other night, where they're just boat racing people, right? Um, I haven't seen anybody throw this out yet as a trap game, but I'm just kind of wondering, going, and not necessarily because they're overlooking the Saints or anything like that. And grain of salt, this may have happened to us last week with the Giants, but there's really no truly good teams in the NFL, I feel like, this year, in the sense that you're going to see them constantly play either good football or play a brand of football that as the season progresses, they keep getting better and better. Kind of like what Kansas City has done the last 2 years. But if you watch Kansas City recently, oh my God, I don't know how they're winning games. And I keep saying that and they keep doing it, but nobody seems to know. But almost everybody else has these crazy up and down games. Um, a team like you think's wired tight, like Buffalo, with everything kind of in a good place. We've talked about McDermott and Joe Brady possibly, and then McDermott pulls some of that idiocy he pulled at the end of that game. Is that supposedly one of the better head coaches in the NFL? It's like almost no coach, no team's immune to just doing dumb stuff and playing dumb at any given moment, quarter, series, half, or game. So I'm more open this year to the what the trap game mentality actually is, and not so much that it's a trap game because of who you're playing or where you're playing them. It's a trap game because that's your week as a good team to play like crap, and a team that you should beat rolls in or gets you at home and ends up coming out with something like a 2017 win, and their fans are probably going, "How the hell did that happen?" Yeah, absolutely. You got to eat the clock. You've got to be good on first and second down. They've got to get back on that minimum 4 yards a rush. And I am beating the drum and champion Kendre Miller big time again over these stretch of last 4 games. So really love to see him stay healthy, and I'd love to see what he can do in the whole course of a game because you know, kind of mentioned the other day that kind of the difference when he was in the game is a couple of those carries he made. Yeah, he made something out of nothing. He made a guy miss early, made a cut early in the run to get away from somebody and turn it upfield. I think 4 or 5 maybe of his runs were kind of like that. That'll help out your shaky offensive line a lot if your back can do that on a consistent basis. But I didn't realize he's got some pop when he runs. I knew he was a little more of a power runner, probably more than anybody else we had on the roster. But man, um, having a hard time getting him on the ground. He moved the pile on the touchdown run a couple other times. That kick return, man, it's the one I'm thinking of. Is he just it was just a collision, and it like it didn't even phase him. Like he almost didn't even know. He just he and a guy covering slammed into each other. So I agree. I think he's a big part of it. And I think if you can get him going, you can in a way get Alvin going. By virtue of you've I think the Giants game was a good indication. Alvin, yeah, I mean, look, 29 years old, and the amount of not necessarily carries, but total touches he's had over his career combined. And rushes and receiving. There is a thing about redlining a running back too early in the game, and the older they get, the more you run that risk of getting them redlined where the, you might not get them back to 100% for that game. Not that they're hurt, but it's just shit. You saw some of the unblocked. They were when the ones he couldn't do anything and getting smushed back there after those first couple of good runs he had. So that catches up with any running back, and a guy like Alvin, it's going to catch up to him just a little bit quicker. So if you can get Kendra to relieve some of that off of Alvin and have, I'm thinking back to the way we use Alvin and Ingram a lot, kind of Miller and Alvin the same way. Just but Miller handle a lot of that tough stuff, give chance Alvin a chance to spring a lot of that bigger stuff. And hopefully our offensive coordinator, if they're both healthy, is figuring out ways to get them on the field at the same time, because that would be lovely too, especially if Miller's running the ball effectively and you can use Alvin out the slot and wide a little bit. No, like I said earlier, not really. If it's game of shit and it helps one of the two young, because I'm about 90% sure it's one of the two young guys, fine with me because they're going to need all help they can get. And I mean, that's one of the things, like whoever's starting, announcing it before the game. I mean, what does it really matter? As coming from a fan, I'll, you know, I don't need to necessarily know right now. I mean, if they tell me, fine, and we can talk about it. And that in that sense, I'd love to know. But as far as the actual winning of the game, I don't know if it matters that much. If we know now, if they don't know, then yeah, that's where the big issue would be. Like if we're having a competition right now in practice, see which one of them starts, that's a problem. And so I'm hoping it's not that. Again, I'm hoping it's just a little gamemanship. They're trying to be a little cagey. Yeah, famous last words. Right next to I didn't know the gun was loaded. Or it could be just you upset that they're not telling you, and so you're upset about it. I don't know. Because again, I don't need to know. I just they need to know. And as long as they know, I'm good. I don't need to know they know. Tell you this much, we'll find out a lot on Sunday either way. Actually, technically less than 1% to 2%. Because if you look, they have the little less than sign before the 1%. So, um, and we're still better off than Chicago because even if Chicago, who they have Minnesota, they're less than 1%. And even if they beat Minnesota, they stay at less than 1%. So we have more hope than they have, basically. Well, two kind of cancels out because odds are they're going to be playing against a rookie quarterback, or in essence, a pretty much a rookie quarterback because Hayner's never look. Their rookie quarterback has more starts and wins in the NFL than our rookie and our second year guy combined. So I don't know if that's a strong point, especially in week 15 of the season. They did not play well under a new head coach a week ago on Sunday. But bless you, sleptwalk through that game. So if they go back to playing like they did the three games before, yeah, we have a much better shot. They resemble anything, especially on the offensive side that we saw, and the coaching decision side that we saw last Sunday against the Giants. Trouble. Yeah, well, Carr not playing. There's a lot of people that feel like that. We'll see because I remember there were some people on this channel who was loving Rattler, and Rattler's going to be the star and the starter, and he should keep the job even when Carr got healthy into that 3-game stretch. And some tunes changed on that real quick. So I think it's all relative at this point. Um, like I said, I'm more about finding information about for the future than I am thinking. And I mean, I want to win. Do not get me wrong. To be honest with you, it's barely beaten out trying to figure out I need to know how these young guys are going to play in these situations. Um, yeah, Groupie could again, if the path goes the way that it's going to have to go to give us a chance to win it. Groupies could very well end up being huge. Um, we get in the and probably from range because quite honestly, we get in the red zone. We have to score touchdowns. I do not need to get into um, a a field goal duel against touchdown duel in this game. And I think Zane Gonzalez, their guy that they've been missing, um, he's been hurt because they've run through a couple different kickers, but their original one, and I think it was Zane Gonzalez that they started the season with, was IR'd at some point, I believe. He shows up in the dome. Unless we get the keep the Rizzy magic going where kickers miss kicks, or in the case of Sunday, get them blocked. Um, they've got a kicker that when healthy, can keep up with Groupie inside of a building. So he needs to be money when we need him, but I prefer not to need him. I need touchdowns out of that offense this week. And Fergus was about ready to make a cameo right across the keyboard there. So, yeah, but it's the NFL. Teams tend to figure out stuff pretty quick. So I don't. Even if you, like I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. Even about the gamemanship, if you're trying to keep it hidden, no matter which one of the three quarterbacks start, to try to throw them off, because they're each three. I don't want to say distinctly different quarterbacks, but their strengths and weaknesses are kind of all over the board, difference wise, I should say. And you're going to scheme and play call a little differently for each one of the three. I think that might be your biggest asset, especially if they're not sure which one during the week that they're going to have to prepare for. But I think they can figure out once it starts once the game kicks off. And statistically, we're in the bottom 5 of defenses, and they're in the top 15. So I mean, I'm more worried about us handling their young rookie quarterback than you know than their. Well, actually, I'm worried about both, but you get my point. I don't think that's in any way, shape, or form going to be an advantage for us. In fact, they'd have to go find a rookie who's never played the game before, probably from, spent the last 6 years in the North Pole, for me to go, yeah, starting their rookie quarterback is an advantage for us. I mean, again, we don't have to write it off. The year's has been written off for us. Connor was written off in that 7-game losing streak. I mean, we've kept hope alive, but again, we can win 4 in a row and still lose the division, and that's that. So it's not even if we could win 4 in a row and that would put us in the playoffs, yeah, that would be maybe the slimmest, but we need to win 4 in a row against 3 teams that are better than us. Sorry. Washington, Green Bay, and Tampa Bay. You got to beat those 3. You got to beat the Raiders, and then you got to get some help from elsewhere, and that helps running low with only 4 weeks left to go in the season. So, well, never unless they start in 2025 fixing the problems that they need to fix going on around the organization. We'll, we've touched on them. We've talked about them. Some people don't like hearing it, but it's the truth. And I'm sure we'll be having these conversations a whole hell of a lot this offseason once we get done with the Tampa Bay game. Biggest thing is they've got everything in the future depends on exactly what they're playing and how they're going to handle Derek Carr. Actually, that's the second thing. First thing is hiring the new coach. Then what they're going to do with Derek Carr. And really, until those two things are decided, because everything that comes after that's just a big domino effect. Head coach wants to keep Carr around, that affects your salary cap. New head coach wants to move on from Carr, that affects your salary cap. Who does you want to move on to? It's going to affect, well, how you acquire him. So fix the problems you can fix first. You got to get those right. We'll work on all the rest. But I think best case scenario would be 2026. Probably reality is 2027. But again, who you're going to hire as coach and what you're going to decide on your quarterback decision and how it affects your salary cap, which is just basically how it's going to affect your ability to get talented football players back in the organization. If I'm Washington, I don't really care because none of them particularly scare me. All I'm worried about if I'm Washington is if I keep the game, um, my offense on the field, really. But if I keep the game moving forward and I keep putting pressure by scoring touchdowns on them, I'm going to beat them. Especially if I can jump on them early. Because if the Saints become one dimensional, as Dandy Don used to sing, "Turn out the lights, party's over." Don't they play New York and Dallas twice? And how do you rate them? Are you talking about Washington? Rate them as a playoff team right now because that's the trajectory they're heading in. They're better than us for sure, which is all that really matters coming up here. Like I said, they got guys that can play on defense. They have got guys that can play on offense. Didn't talk about their offensive line. Probably should have. Most places you go look, they have a top 10 offensive line in the NFL, which helps a lot with the rookie quarterback in the kind of, I want to say hodgepodge receiving core, but the fact that McLaurin's the guy and the number 2 receiver who was the number 2 receiver is out for a while. Still got a bevy of guys to get the ball to, and they can run it and they can throw it. Yeah. They can get any better than that, really. Yeah, lucky you get them at all, Big V. Finding out, I'm glad you brought that up because I should have probably mentioned this. Um, because I may have heard a solution on the problem, but what the problem is, and I'm getting it too, because um, with notifications on YouTube's been squirrely for a while, apparently, and some of the live streams that I watch, I don't see them right away. I get on other people complaining, "Hey, I didn't know y'all were live. I didn't, get it till late." But even when y'all put stuff in the comments on the regular videos, it's supposed to send me a notification so I know that they're in there so I can go read them and respond. And I have it set where it also sends me an email. And there's a lot of times I'm doing stuff, I'm getting no notifications whatsoever where especially in a spot where I could sit down and answer y'all. And then right before I leave to go do something else that I have to get done, a meeting to go to or whatever, I check my email one last time and I see that y'all put comments in going. So that's been a issue. Now, last night or the night before, in one of the ones I was on, they were talking about it. Somebody said that like unclicking and clicking back, at least for them, worked to where they were getting timely notifications again. So you may try that, but just hang in there. I'm trying to keep Thursdays same time every week. Sunday kind of just depends if I'm gonna go to the game and kind of what else because it's Sunday. What else I got going on kind of dictates the time of when I can get in there, but it's gonna normally be at night. Um, if I were to keep it, or rather, if I would change it to, if I have to change it to Thursdays from 2 to 3, move it back an hour, whatever. I'll try real hard to get the message out there as much as I can to everyone. But right now, same time, 2 Central, adjust whatever time zone y'all may be in. But thanks for bringing that up, just in case anybody else is having the same problem. They have a better quarterback. They have a better offensive line. They have a better number 1 wide receiver. They have, if Austin Eckler was healthy, they would have a better running back core, but we're probably about even on them. As an individual running back, Robinson's really, really good when he's healthy. So that's close. They have edge players that can bring as much pressure as our edge players, but they actually sack them. Their interior, probably slightly better than ours. Their linebacking core is as good as ours. Their corners right now are better, and their safeties kind of depends on Chin's level of play. Because he's probably you're going to get the most out of him. Quan Martin, their other young safety who plays the free safety, not so much. Maybe about even. That's why. Yeah, absolutely. We're the best team in football after 2 games. But that's why you play a whole season. Because we went to crap in a hurry. And some other teams who were kind of crappy at the beginning of the season have played better. Because you are allowed, as much as it sucks that you're allowed to get worse, which we did. In the case of other teams who started out worse, you're allowed to get better. That's, I believe Herm Edwards said it best. That's why you play the game. But absolutely, if you'd have sustained even half of what you did the first 2 weeks, you're above 500 right now. And if you're above 500 right now, you have a legitimate shot at the playoffs. Moving on. No, right now they are because they have Lattimore. They were if Lattimore doesn't show up there and is still on our team, yes, we have the best corners. He's the difference. To take him completely out of the equation, I think it's a what and what situation. They've got some young guys. This and this. And the only reason why they made that trade is because they were rebuilding from the ground up. This time last year, they had traded away everything they could trade away. They knew the stuff we should have been doing. We should have probably unloaded some guys at the trade deadline other than Lattimore if we could move them. They were ready to move on from a whole crap ton of their players because they were rebuilding the whole thing and they weren't expecting to make the playoffs in 2024. Voila, here they are. So they were like, yeah, we need to add a Lattimore type to really help us out. But watch them play. Watch us play. It's no comparison. You're welcome. And actually, I mean, it kind of did us a favor. Imagine how, and you may not know because I'm can clearly tell you're a Commanders fan, but we're totally screwed right now as of the cap in 2025. And if we'd still have Lattimore, it would be, oh my God, it would be probably impossible. So I'm actually thanking y'all to take him because um what he's got left in the tank probably would have been useless. Like this year, we're not going to make the playoffs, and we're probably not going to be very good next year either. So you make playoffs with him, man. They're doing more with him than we could have. Yeah, I do, Northern. But it doesn't change anything. Well, in 13 games, he's got him in a winning season and a chance to make the playoffs. So better than the guy we had by far. I mean, was sometimes over the short term when you're talking about a season, results speak for themselves. Something Saints fans don't always like to acknowledge, but it is true. And like I said, he's exceeding expectations. There's no doubt about that. You ask me what rate him in the long term, can't do it. And he's a guy in Dan Quinn who said even before he got hired in this job, I don't remember when he said it. I don't remember if it was prior to being hired by Dallas or while he was at Dallas, but said that his experience in Atlanta, especially getting blowing the famous 28-3 in the Super Bowl, has taught him far more about coaching than his successes, which take it with a grain of salt, but we'll find out. 2 or 3 years from now, you'll have a better answer to that question. We've been in cap hell since before. Well, we still had Drew Brees. We were just always could handle it. And I don't want to really say cap hell. We were always up against it, but we could always do cap gymnastics and maneuver around it. But it finally caught up to us in the last 3 or 4 years. Uh, Basic gist of it: when the salary cap, instead of going up like we always assumed it did, went down because of the COVID year, and then Drew Brees finally retired, and where all his dead money happened like almost all at once. That's where we've been fighting a losing battle, trying to get under the salary cap to start the season and still keep Town on the roster, and it's just finally caught up with us. Interesting enough, in Lattimore, and I don't know why exactly how this worked, but there was about, I remember what it was, 18 million in options that when y'all took the contract went with him. That was basically dead money for us. So we'd have had another 18 million floating around on that contract that y'all agreed to pay for, however it worked. And for that, I'm thankful. Again, I'd hate to see how bad it would be if he was still here. Plus, to get out of this, we're going to have to draft some rookies that are probably going to make the team and play an awful lot next year. So we did get a couple of decent picks out of the deal too. So hopefully that'll all add up over a course of time. I actually have one that's about an ounce and a half bigger, but it was dirty. So we went with the 22 ounce, I believe that is. Yeah, every day. Yeah. I don't even know what to say to that, Northern, but good for you. Yeah. Well, I'm more delightful when we have actual NFL talent on the field and winning games and actually legitimately a threat to make the playoffs. That's where my delight lies. No, I don't hate him. In fact, look, I mean, he's got an audition. He's got an 8-game audition. Honestly, if progress report, the first 2 games, I complete 180 from the head coach we had before, and there was no doubt you had a Rizzy bump going on there. That helped out a lot. It carried over into that Rams game, and like I said, we had a chance in that game, and on paper that was one. It's kind of resembling this Commanders game. On paper, we probably shouldn't have, but we hung around in there, and we had a chance at the very end. We had a chance to even tie it on the last play. If we get a pass off and able to hit the wide open guy in the end zone. So I mean, that's kind of where we are now. The only real total blemish on this record was the debacle last week in New York. And if you see more of that, then I think a lot of attitude about Rizzy is going to change. But if you keep bringing back what we saw in the first 3 games, and you get that team swinging back this way, look, I do not know how much interest is going to be in the New Orleans job. What's open right now? You've got obviously the Jets, Chicago, us. I feel like I'm forgetting one that's already fired a coach, but by all reports, it looks like Peterson may not survive in Jacksonville. The interim / head coach for the Raiders, I just read something today that Davis was like, no, he's not necessarily, he or the GM is necessarily secure. Rumblings a few weeks ago that Taylor was going to be fired, but Cincinnati's kind of gained some momentum and moved back onto the bubble of making the playoffs, so that might save him. But Black Monday is going to be long. I think there's going to be quite a few jobs opening up come the day after the season. So how attractive is the Saints job compared to all the other ones opening up? So who are we going to be able to bring in for an interview, much less hire? And I don't want to say we're getting stuck with Rizzy, but what I want to say is I want to see Rizzy keep getting better as a head coach or showing more as a head coach that he could be the right guy, because he may be the best option, because the guys, our dream hires, the Ben Johnsons of the world or whoever else, may have zero interest to coming here and wanting to coach. And if enough jobs open up, it's going to be harder. So, and to your point, the fact that yes, we have a passionate coach again on the sideline that's really uh, shaking the team up is something we needed. The only thing I need him to do was like in the first half of the Giants, it was really my big knock against some of the coaching decisions was he was a little too passionate because in that game we could have punted and played field position instead of going for the stupid fake punt or the super long field goal and ultimately put us in a better position to score more than 7 points in the first half, open up a little bit more of a lead and not get into that crap show game we got into in the second half. You can't help it. Because I mean, just how we find ourselves where we no, you're good. Because I cringe when I have to bring it up, but it's just some of the conversations we're talking about the way this season has kind of pounded itself out. You're going, you can't help it. I mean, you really can't. And when you're going to talk about Rizzy, so I'm going to speak highly of him again here. I think look, we all kept saying, "Oh, the locker room's fine," but how about we just say the previous head coach? The previous head coach was here, and we were all going, "Yeah, you sure? You think?" And then when you see even Rizzy being almost insanely passionate, let's just say on the sideline with his punter, where AK's got to go over there and try to make peacemaker and all, but everybody's okay with it. He's got the locker room. Like they don't mind any of that. That as a head coach, he's going to go off a little bit, but it's fine because I think as an organization and as players individually, but everybody on the 53 and on the sideline goes, look, that's just him trying to win a football game, and they're buying into that. Because all fairness, if we don't have the fight and the buy-in and the passion that Rizzy had in that Giants game, they freaking beat us. They're going to come back and win that game in the fourth quarter, and we are all going to be. We weren't happy the way the game was played and it ended, but we'd have been really pissed. Um, I have not jumped in the draft real deep so far. It's going to be on my agenda, obviously, because it's hugely important for us. Um, yeah, and the wiggle room y'all had was also a product of the fact of that because I don't know how tight y'all were against the cap this time last year, but I know it was nowhere near the y'all opened up some space. Was the fact that y'all were preparing for what was coming and opening up some space. So I just hope somebody in our front office and running the show took a good look at what y'all kind of did. And went, all right, kind of have a footprint to follow. Um, I'm going to assume you were in a better cap space than we were to start 2024. Not quite have to make all the moves we're going to have to make to get under the cap, which helps you out with that. Which is, the way you want to do it because it gives a team an opportunity where I don't know at what point your front office and your coaching staff went, "Holy crap, we're going to be a lot better this year than we were planning on being." But I have a feeling it was very early in the process, and they were going, "Yeah, we might be making some trades and spending some money um, because we're closer to our goal than we thought we'd be while we were tearing it down and rebuilding it." In fact, I don't know about drafting the two guys you got, but I'm thinking our front office may need to go find some of your front office guys and hire them, get them over here to do the same job that they did for y'all last year. Yeah, I doubt it. Yeah, you should. Put it this way, if you don't, might really, really rethink a lot of the future of your season at this point. But they only have y'all up 7 point favorites, which I find would have been 10 or 14. I'd have been like, yeah, that sounds about right. Either a sense of humor or the ability to um, the ability to channel frustration into a single moment of rage, scream loudly, and what is that they call it, the primordial scream or something that I gotta occasionally rip off, watching a game. Just get rid of it and move on. But yeah, sense of humor. I mean, look, the way things are stacked up on us this year, sometimes all you can do is laugh and just go, Jesus. Yeah, buddy, that's not even remotely hilarious or anything else. That's really the question, and we're so limited on right now coming into this. We were kind of limited in the pieces we wanted, especially on the offensive line. So I'm not sure if we we really had what we wanted, or we were just talking ourselves into the thought we had what we wanted because we didn't have the ability to replace them with the stuff we really wanted. Um, we saw flashes of it at times, especially early in the season, but not so much lately. But yeah, we've been through the ringer, so I and if a new coach comes in, I, I I'm going to assume it's going to be a staff cleanout. I don't even know if Kubiak and those guys stay. If they decide to make Rizzi the full time coach, remove the interim tag from him, pretty sure everybody's going to stay. So again, and it's just like um, for the Saints, once we're done with Week 18 and the big questions we got coming up this off season, biggest one's going to be who's the head coach. Yeah, yeah, but it's not a joking matter. I'm gonna put it to you this way, and then we're gonna just put it to bed. If you knew somebody who was in the service or a first responder um, that lost their life, you wouldn't be making jokes about it. So this isn't the time or the place for it. I don't give a crap about what anybody thinks about a game we played 3 years ago. The only thing takeaway that keeps coming back from that game is that's what you're going to look like in 3 years if you don't fix it. I think you keep missing the point on this. Northern, I know you love to live in the past, but it's not about that. It's about in a few years, we're going to be playing like the Giants played in that game or all the games previously and losing games like that and having 2-10 seasons and hoping. Like I said, it doesn't get any more real than going back and watching like Bad Dog and those guys up in New York live streaming during the game. Glad that on the second or third to last play, we tackled Malik Neighbors before he ran into the end zone. Perfectly happy that Brazil jumped over the line and blocked that kick, so they could keep their number 2 overall pick alive and hoping they can squeak into the first overall. So I mean, if you want to be that guy, I don't. That's the point of all that. Yeah. Excuse me one second, will y'all? Yep, right. Sorry, he's gone and done with. Yeah, I took care of that. He's been uh kicked out and comments deleted. So we'll just move on. And look, Jared, don't worry about it. We God knows we've got our idiot fans too. So, Yeah, 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 that's good. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, no, it's Northern I like to go to butt heads. I think he's my foil in life, my friendly arch nemesis when it comes to talking Saints. Um, that's a lightning rod question. Just basically based on the fact, I will give 100% to credit to this to Nick Underhill when he was on T Bob and Hester the other day. Um, that when you mentioned the name Derek Carr, it's a lightning rod because there seemed to just everybody gets immediately extreme one side or the other, where he's the you know the he's better than he appears. Um, you know, you know that side, and then the other side is they you say his name, they just spit on the ground and make some sign like the evil eye just because they think he's cursing the team or whatever. But I think he's not your quarterback of the future. No matter what you think of him individually, whether you extol him as one of the best quarterbacks ever that's gotten a bad rap his whole 11 years, or if you're like he's the worst quarterback ever and he's gotten too much hype over the last 11 years, or anywhere in between, he's not your quarterback of the future. And he's tying up way, way too much of your salary cap. And I think that problem has to be addressed. However, personally, I think there would be some teams that would maybe be interested in him. And if you could trade him, especially if you could rework the deal, get away from guaranteeing that 30 million and having that muddle up the conversation and just kind of move on. Um, if you go to over the cap on their calculator, you play around with it. If we were to trade him um, right after the season, beginning of next off season, I think it's like 11 or 12 million you would free up off the cap. So that projected 62, 63, whatever would be somewhere around 50. Get what you can get for him in return. And you're probably not going to be able to ask a lot. And then set the table to move on from there. And just as a business decision, because I think that's what we're going to is having to kind of reset everything, clear the cap, like Jared was just asking the question. Um, and I think you can string it out because I think the best thing you can do if you keep him around, he's basically going to be a bridge quarterback for one more year. You still got to get him the, you still got to redo his deal to do that, and then you're still looking to replace him. Like to me, it's just almost like let's rip the band-aid off real fast instead of doing it slowly and just suck it up and deal with what we're gonna have to deal with and then move on. And look, now I don't think the draft quarterback position doesn't seem like we've been talking about this, mentioning it. We really having a long conversation about it over the last few weeks, but the quarterbacks coming out of college this year, like nobody's really overly excited like they were about Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and Caleb Williams in this crew. And if you look, Washington definitely, Denver pretty much definitely got two of them right off the bat, figured out how to use them, has gotten good games out of them and a chance to keep developing them and for what you draft a first round quarterback for. Some of the other ones, kind of the jury's still out. So you find yourself in that position. Maybe there is that guy sitting there that is one of those that you're able to get because we probably going to be hovering around 10, I think. Um, and maybe anywhere from 9 to 11 or 13 or somewhere in there. So you might be able to get one of those guys. I think cars is where you start, and then kind of just have to backpedal it and go from there. Yeah, I know he's I kind of get what you're saying because I've noticed that. I didn't know if like depressed, but just and I'm not trying to speculate one way or the other, but it's almost like when he's a little bit like when he was on T Bob and Hester, because they brought up the Derek Carr thing and they're going to move on. His response was, I guess, it sounded like a little labored. Like either he, I don't really want to have this conversation again, or I, I don't want to say no. I suspect or maybe heard something, but it's not confirmed, so I can't say it. So now I'm trying to have the conversation and talk around that without, something along those lines. But yeah, I have noticed he's been a little, I think measured, but I mean, it could be something else, but just in a lot of the stuff that they've been talking about. Yeah. Really and truly, most of those, and actually, though, before I even say that, that list could possibly grow because Kirk Cousins may be on it shortly. Um, that's the downside of the jumping in the quarterback. Whether you're taking a veteran and you're overpaying uh, the contract, even if you're getting guys that are pretty good. I mean, most of those guys, even Dak Prescott or Derek Carr, I'm of the opinion that probably in any given year, top half, sneaking into the top 10 of quarterbacks in the NFL. Are they going to get any higher than that? Probably not, but that's okay. You can still win a lot of football games. You can make playoffs, and you get a team good enough around them where they don't have to be an elite quarterback to be able to win. Then maybe you make a run and get in the big game. But when you overpay them and they become a drag to your cap, that's the problem. And yeah, all those guys have did that and forced the team to get out of it and to get out of it and to fix it, you're going to have probably a painful year or two. And if you do it right, no more than that, and you can move forward. If you keep doing it wrong, like some teams have, the Jets, uh, that's just a problem that keeps stacking up, and it's tough to get out of that cycle. I think for once you get caught up in it, and that's really if you're the Saints, but you got to be careful whether you're going to burn. Let's say we sneak in the top 10. We end up picking 8 or 9 somewhere in there, and Cam Ward or Shadir Sanders or whoever, like the top couple of guys, all one of them falls down right there, and we take them. If you're wrong and you pass on a good football player that's going to be on your team like 7, 8, 9 years and playing at a high level, and you wind up with that bust first round. And anybody can bust, I understand, but quarterback is going to be a higher percentage most of the time than any other position. So yeah, it's a problem. It that just keeps growing, and you having to fight out of it and fix it. Be a bitch. Um, I'm gonna take Daniels because, and look, I'm gonna tell you straight up, it's recency bias. Okay, because they're all good quarterbacks in their own way. They all do stuff like if all 5 of them are really good at different stuff and probably have their weaknesses and everything else. I do not believe in the sure thing of a quarterback. I don't care what they possess or what people talk about them or anything. But one thing I think gets a lot of quarterbacks in trouble is, I hate to say it, that's the only way I can say it. If you're going to be a starting NFL quarterback, it's damn near a full time job. There really is no off season. If you really listen to the truly successful ones that we've had over the last few years that weren't just a flash in the pan or a couple of good years or whatever, like I mean, you mentioned one with Rodgers, towards the end of his, Brady, Breeze, they all had some semblance of take X number of time off as soon as you play your last game of the season and get away from football and reset or whatever. And then they start the process of getting ready for the next season. A month, maybe 2 months off out of the rest of it. They're nothing but football, prep, workouts, everything 24/7. Um, and the reason why I say that is because in the Regency buys, when they were having these conversations, um, this last offseason around this time, who's going to be the top and best quarterback? And all, the only thing I can hang my hat on is I knew Daniels that when he went back to LSU, um, sat down with the coaching staff and they talked about it, but like the national media never really picked up on it. And they were having their exit interview after his first season there, and it was whether he was, they were talking to him, well, you may go in this area or what or this round, and he was talking to the advisors and all that let him know. And they were having the conversation. Well, you could come back. You have another year of eligibility, back and forth. But one of the things he asked him, he said, well, if I come back, what are y'all going to do to make me better so I can be a better draft pick? And they said, well, okay, we'll put you on a regimen and a program. He'd go into their practice facility at 5 a.m., got him to change the code so he could get in that early and do all this that whole year before his Heisman. And what that told me is okay, he is one of the guys that has at least got at least 1 year of a track record of doing what the Rodgers and the Brees and the Bradys and all those guys, the Mannings, did that whole offseason to get ready for the next one and to be the very best they can be. Sorry, it's a long story to get there, but it's the only one I can give you as an example of why I would pick Daniels, because I think they all have potentially a chance to be really good NFL quarterbacks. Is it going to turn out that way? Are they going to put the work in it? I mean, physically and ability wise, on paper, they should all be elite NFL quarterbacks. The reality is we know they're not. So you're trying to figure out, well, what's gonna stop them, or what can they do to prevent, to make sure they reach their full potential. To me, one of the big things is how hard are they, or how willing they are to work hard in the offseason, because you just play in a position that's basically a year-round job in the modern NFL. Yeah, I know. Well, that's one thing. He's not uh but none of those guys should be running the way he ran in college. So and in that defense, I've seen him get lit up and pop right back up like nothing happened. But you don't want to make that a habit in the NFL. I'm quite sure Jared's coaching staff up there in Washington, I'm really sure, is pounding that in his head, going, "You're not as big as Anthony Richardson," and he got lit up twice in Indy last year, concussion and busted his shoulder, whatever it was, and he was done for the year. And going, no, 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 ditch that running style, but be effective when you run. I mean, but they paid him a ton of money, and there's already a call going on with bench him and start Penix after the 4 games he just put in. And I mean, I think it's not that dissimilar from when he was with Minnesota a couple of those years, where I think he would go on these hot streaks where they'd win a lot of games, and then he'd go on these cold streaks and they couldn't put any wins together. Kind of just the, team's going to go as a quarterback goes generally, right? But he'd done it before. Again, I don't follow Minnesota that closely. In Atlanta, because they're in a division, a little more information on it. But I don't think the pattern's all that dissimilar than some of the stuff he's done the last few years in Minnesota. Yeah, they have a backup plan, and curious part is if they end up having to start Penix and he gets him back to the division lead and takes him on a playoff run. Oh my God, what do you do with Cousins contract at that point? But I guess maybe it would be a good problem to have by then. I don't really know. So, yeah. No. Look, you understand he's a volunteer, 100%. It's when he can make it and when he can do it, and he's got a lot going on, so it he's not always available. One of the reasons why I try to push it back, but, um, I ask, and if he can make it, he makes it. Actually, I don't even ask anymore. I just send him the link to join, and he'll normally let me know if he can make it. I think you just kinda back in the car, uh, no pun intended. Derek Carr, I think that's all the same kind of level of quarterback, more or less. I throw Dak Prescott in there. Um, I don't have a problem with him if that's what you need to quarterback your team, but you again, the two things you can't do, you can't assume they are an elite quarterback, and then you damn sure can't pay him like one because I don't think they are. But if you assume they are what they are and pay them accordingly, and I get like the league average keeps driving quarterbacks up, and what are you going to do? But at some point, these contracts just get too exorbitant because if they don't become the elite quarterback that we're all pretty sure at this point in their career they showed us they're not going to be, you find yourself in these crazy cap situations and even got look, and we should have known better because I love Drew. I really, really do. Um, but towards the end, his contract was getting so crazy, and he quite honestly, those last couple of years was not an elite quarterback. But it was what it was at that point. I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers falling in the same category right now. If you watch him play, it's just so inconsistent play out of him, and it's mostly because he's like just an older quarterback that Father Time is undefeated. Sooner or later, he's going to get you, and as it starts building, you're going. It's not your quarterback of the future. And if you got a lot of money tied up in him, it's not good. Kind of the same thing with these. Let's call them the perennial. They're somewhere between 12 and 8. Be generous about it. Quarterbacks of that level, like where Carr or Cousins is, sooner or later they're going to make that higher tier money, and then that's where you can get in trouble if they don't get you there by themselves, or if you can't acknowledge, look, we're overpaying for them. We better figure out some guys to come in here and help them. That's not going to cost us a lot. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I hear you on that. As Saints fans, sometimes we have to suffer and get a little aggravated and get a little upset and look, not so much this year, but yes, I've had years where I just couldn't force myself to do it. I just couldn't. Not lately, going back quite a few years, but I get the feeling. It still amazes me, Marcus Davenport. Like everybody keeps getting the syndrome of, oh, he'll finally be healthy this year and he'll reach his potential. Uh, I mean, I don't think he's a bad guy. I mean, I hang out with him and drink a beer. Again, I don't necessarily like if he would come out in this offseason and go, yeah, I'm just haven't been playing and leading the team. It's not worth the contract I signed and take a big cut and stick around for a couple of years. And yeah, that relieves some cap pressure and you can do some stuff and make the team better. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Okay. I nothing personal against him. I mean, this is yeah, it's like The Godfather Part 1 and 2. It's just business. It's not personal. And at this point, and look, he is not the only one on the roster that at this point the contract their production is never going to live up to the contract you've got written on paper on him. Just he happens to have the most money. Yep. Ooh, hour and 20. Yeah, we went over and long as per usual, but hey, man, we're having a lot of fun. Why the hell not, right? And do me a favor, if it is your first time here, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Algorithm loves that, but go ahead and hit the subscribe and the notification and hope it works because, as Big V pointed out earlier, his is kind of working on a delay action. Some aren't working. Mine is having trouble. So hit the notification and then just kind of remind yourself to kind of keep checking back every now and again and see if we've got something popping up there. So, all right, Northern, last one because I actually have to be going in a little bit. Over the cap would be for both Carr and Cousins. I don't think you could get Cousins because we'll put it to you this way. You couldn't get the transaction through to get Cousins. The league would shut it down because they would go, that puts you over the cap. If you follow the reasoning. Right now, you're 63 million over the cap. So to keep Carr as is without getting, which means you got to save 63 million over projected cap, excuse me. You have to save 63 million off before you can sign anybody or do anything. So if you're planning on adding Cousins on top of him, you'd probably have to shave 100 million plus off to put Cousins on your roster next to him. The math just don't work. I tell people, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but it's the reality of it. This isn't fantasy football trading you're doing here in the NFL or signing or drafting or anything when you're deep in the hole in the money situation like the Saints are. But some of these guys, it's like you'd love to have two guys, not necessarily in the same position, but let's say two guys with that amount of money on their contracts. Say one's a quarterback and one's a wide receiver, trying to figure out how to do it because there's just a limit on everything. So, but mathematically, maybe if you cut everybody and that was the only two guys on your team, you might be able to swing it. So, all righty. But like I was saying, notification thing may be a little shaky. So just keep checking back, but definitely give me a thumbs up. Please give me a subscribe. We'll be back. Plan for the rest of the week before I go. Gonna have on the videos on potential head coaches. I've got either two coming separately or I may combine them together. I'm still not sure on the time frame on that. But it will be tomorrow or Saturday morning. It'll be up. Tell you now, because if in case your notification didn't work, and to let you know, it will be up no later than Saturday morning. So if you check by Saturday morning, it will be up. But basically, Glenn and Vrabel, and I think I'm gonna try to put them together and do it as one video. But we'll see. Sunday night, it's going to be pretty much the same time, probably 8:30 p.m. Central, Northern. I don't know where you live, but I know it's a different time zone. Make sure you do the math in case your notification isn't working. But it'll be 8:30 Central. We'll do the post game. One way or the other, no matter what happens in that game, we're going to have a lot to talk about because it's the game I think that's really going to set up our offseason, especially if we end up playing one of the young cornerbacks and don't miraculously throw Carr out there coming out of concussion protocol with a broken left hand. But it sounded like if they think he can go, they're going to throw him out there. So either way, that's going to be a topic of conversation. Win or lose, there's ramifications going on for this team. And I think even at the minus 1% chance of making the playoffs, and one of the things that is making this team interesting right now is knowing, look, first time in a long time, we're actually going to or should be doing a rebuild. What's it going to look like? How long is it going to take? Northern was bringing that up earlier. I think every week we play kind of get you closer and closer to the answer to those questions. So, any given post-game show, no matter what happens on the field, we'll have a lot to talk about. And we're definitely going to have a lot to talk about Sunday night. So, until I see you Sunday night, I'm Tim. Peace out. And who dat?